Now that spring is here, I've moved many of the plants from the greenhouse outside, where they will stay until fall. So now I have floor space again in the greenhouse. I just need to remember to keep it this way, so I'm not scrambling to find space once it's time to move everything back inside again. Keeping open floor space is an ongoing struggle for me. I've consolidated my smaller plants by planting them all together in larger containers, and these are part of my stock to propagate from for future riparium builds. This way I don't have to keep buying plants to use in my projects. I can just propagate what I need. Back in January, I bought some Whitecloudminnows to go in this stock tank, hoping I could get a colony started, and it is working. I was out here checking things out one day, and I saw some very small fry swimming at the surface, probably just a few days old, and looking closer I noticed more fry of varying sizes, so I'm really happy to see that. A new plant that I'm experimenting with is money tree, Pachira aquatica. It's native to Central and South American swamplands, so that kind of native habitat is a good indicator that it may work well in a riparium, and so far it's doing great. I have several here, and they were all growing in one pot braided together, which is the only way I've seen them sold. I took them apart and potted them individually. Some are growing just in the water and some are potted in substrate. So far the potted ones are doing best, and I'm expecting the roots to grow down to the bottom of the tank. I wonder if I had one tall enough, if it could be planted directly in the substrate of the tank, growing immersed above the water. The red philodendron is putting on new growth. The antherium hasn't done as well over the winter, but with all of these roots, I'm expecting it to hit its stride again soon. The guppies are breeding like crazy. No surprise there. Much of the colony is showing darker color traits with each new generation, which is making them more difficult to see in this tank. So I may need to introduce some brighter colors again. 3 other plants that I'm experimenting with are moth orchid and asparagus fern, which are in substrate and partially in the water, so the roots can have plenty of oxygen as they draw up water, and ground orchid, which I may have shown you before, I can't remember, but it comes from parts of Asia down through the South Pacific Islands and occurs naturally in wet areas near swamps and streams. I've been growing it for several months now, and it has even bloomed. The Monstera continues to thrive in this tank. Now it's important to note that these tanks did not have water heaters in them over the winter. However, the greenhouse was heated, but the water temps did frequently dip into the upper 50-degree Fahrenheit range. But the Monstera and most of the other plants, even the guppies, did not show signs of stress. Now that the Monstera has gotten so tall, I'm seeing which plants I can grow under it, like the ground orchid and golden goddess philodendron and some others. I'm trying to get layers of growth like you would see in nature, and I would like to try to replicate this indoors. I am trying this method in the 75-gallon tank, and it's working pretty well, but I'm finding that a more powerful light would be helpful in order to accommodate the multiple layers of plants. I may even need multiple light fixtures to accommodate each layer. I'm still just using a cheap 48-inch shop light that I paid around 20 bucks for, but it does the job. I did lower it so that these understory plants could have better access to the light. This Propagating Canna lily did go dormant over the winter, interestingly enough, even though the greenhouse was heated. But now it's putting on marvelous new growth, and it's even rooted into the substrate now of the tank. I was going to try to lift it out of the water to show you the roots, but I didn't want to pull the roots from the substrate since it's doing so well. Well, let's talk some about nutrients. I really don't think there's enough waste being produced in these tanks, in my opinion, for some of these plants that are feeding directly from the water column. Now, the plants that have roots going down to the substrate, they're doing great. So I'm thinking about consolidating the Whitecloudminnows and the guppies in one tank and getting goldfish to go in this tank. I say goldfish because well, they do a great job of cleaning up duckweed, but at some point I do want to build a goldfish riparium to really push my idea of using houseplants as a water filter to the limit by growing these plants with a notoriously messy fish like goldfish. Well, that's just a few things that are going on so far in the greenhouse this spring. Thank you so much for joining me today, and be sure to throw some houseplants in that fish tank.